This is so bad for anyone saving in euros, because Friedrich Merz just had his whatever-it-takes moment and is confirming a massive debt bomb that's now heading for Germany. Get ready for even more theft, robbery, and expropriation. Friedrich Merz is lying directly to the voters' faces. We're now facing an absolute escalation of debt with a new special fund of 500 billion, but that's still not enough. Friedrich Merz is also going to break the current debt brake, and he even promised his voters that he wouldn't do this. And the debt brake is totally sacred and really important, and blah blah blah. Let's take a look at everything he said here in detail. You can basically print money here without limits, printing money for new military spending. And the international market sees that Germany is on the brink of collapse. And right now, we see that the yields on 10-year government bonds are being pushed up massively. That means no one is interested in the capital market anymore. Interest in German government bonds is dropping because people understand that the system is at its end and Germany is heading for a crash, partly because of clowns like Friedrich Merz. Here you can see that the bond yields are going up massively. So here we have, let's just say, the total collapse. That's rolling towards us. He's committing election fraud here. People are getting screwed from start to finish. The next thing is about the special fund. That's not a special fund, those are special debts. This is all about inflating the people. Of course, they say we're going to build infrastructure and stuff like that. That means we now have several amendments to the basic law coming our way. We're also going to take a look at the whole speech by Friedrich Merz, where he confirms this. We have to acknowledge first that it's obviously super good for all those limited goods like Bitcoin, gold, silver, and even stocks, if you ask me. That's going to pump everything up. When the euro goes to zero, limited goods and so on are going up. It's an absolute scandal what's going on here. And what's really striking is that now Friedrich Merz is using the same rhetoric by Mario Draghi, who in 2012 led the euro debt crisis. The word, whatever it takes, or the sentence, whatever it takes. He used it when he said, okay, hey, we have to save this at all costs and basically just flood everything with money. That's exactly what they're doing now, flooding everything even more with money. That's what Draghi said back then, and now Friedrich Merz is saying exactly the same thing, whatever it takes. And that, as I said, has very serious consequences for everyone who is now in the euro. I always say that anyone who is still in the euro has absolutely lost control of their life. But before we dive into this intense speech by Friedrich Merz, where he, let's say, deceives the voters, where he deceives the whole country, and where he really announces that something massive is coming our way, signaling a huge debt quake. Before we take a look at that, let's quickly check out what he said about the debt brake before the election.
Ms. Marschwiger, let me explain why I'm so clear about the debt brake. The savings, or let's put it better, it protects the money and the tax payments of the younger generation. And now, some from the younger generation are sitting here. Should we spend their money today because we have what we have? We collect 1 trillion euros in taxes every year, and we're not supposed to make do with that.
Well, it can't be that people change their minds so much within a few days that they worship the debt brake so highly and holy, and says, hey, debt brake to the moon, we definitely have to stick to it. And now they've been elected, and then they break the debt brake, they just tear the whole thing apart. And now it allows for almost unlimited debt for military spending. So, that's the next thing. That means, then all the military spending comes in. And at the same time, they start with all the fear-mongering rhetoric. They say, oh, now the big attack is coming, and everything is really, really bad. And I've already told you in the last videos how this is always done. Then they say, okay, hey folks, the debt brake is good or everything is good. Getting into debt is bad too, you know. We're not doing any of that, but now we have an emergency situation. We're in a really, really bad crisis. This is now, for example, 2025 direction industry with Putin is attacking. Then we had 2020, pharmaceutical industry with killer virus. So they did that too. So they also said, okay, everything is really, really bad. The world is coming to an end. We need to print a ton of money right now. And then we had the 2008 banking crisis, the financial crisis here. So they also said, okay, now we have to roll out these massive bailout packages. We have to bail out all the banks, and we have to expropriate the savers again. And every time, fear is used. By the way, this isn't a quote from me, but from Stefan Hamburg, who said this. Here, for the third time, in just 17 years, an industry is showered with money due to irrational fears. And democracy is being pushed to its limits. You can assume that the government is well diversified in fear and involved in all industries. At the same time, you're quietly running the climate scam. This is the quote from Stefan Hamburg, who's investing in the arms industry here, or who has any insider deals going on. And so, he's obviously very well positioned here. And in the end, you end up putting together some tanks that you just kind of store in the garage, or something like that. I mean, yeah, there are also voices that say, okay, hey, we need to help Ukraine, and so on. I don't want to comment on that, but feel free to write below. Write in the comments whether you think it's a good idea that war machinery is being promoted, that they're building tanks here, And then they just say, okay, when it comes to war, we can throw money at it endlessly. But when it comes to other things, when it comes to our own country or something like that, then I say, sometimes, there's just no money here. And above all, there's always this logic of, yeah, we can't really save anything. That means I would always advocate that before we rack up debt, we should first make some cuts. Debt only really in special cases. And when it really makes absolute sense, when you also know that the return on investment is there. But what about savings? What about making things more efficient? And so, stuff like that isn't even talked about. But now, check out this dystopian speech from Friedrich Merz. Let's fucking go. This speech is sending Bitcoin to new highs. I can tell you this already, because new debt means new money. New inflation means a weak euro. Weak fiat currencies mean strong Bitcoin.
The factions of the CDU, CSU, and SPD will introduce a proposal in the German Bundestag next week that amends the basic law so that the necessary defense spending from the federal budget of the Federal Republic of Germany, which exceeds an amount equal to 1% of our GDP, will be exempt from the restrictions of the debt brake.
Guys, grab a coconut, get comfy, because what's coming next is going to be a lot tougher. But what he basically said here is, money printer go BRR, which, if you break it down, means we're firing up the printing press. We're completely wrecking the euro. But the really crazy statements are yet to come. Now he's already said that the debt brake will be lifted, it will be circumvented. You guys had the other quote earlier from him where he still said, hey guys, we can't just inflate away the future generations. Those are the debts of the future, and so on. So it's an absolute clown show. Let me know in the comments what you think about the fact that voting doesn't seem to make any sense these days. That means you vote for a party, but then the politicians don't do what they want them to do. I mean, it's just absurd. So why even bother voting if you choose people, but they just end up doing something completely different? That means the politicians, they just play games with you, like they're just being funny right now. And that's the important thing, why I'm telling you, hey, invest your energy, your time, your purchasing power in Bitcoin, where no politician can take away your purchasing power, where no politician can redistribute your purchasing power. It's so important to get into Bitcoin right now. Make sure to check out the Bitcoin Hotel webshop, where you can find this awesome special edition Bitcoin Hotel hodler that will bring even more Bitcoin into your life. So awesome here, let's fucking go. Here's the link below. And here we go straight to the Bitcoin hodler.
I want to make it very clear. In light of the threats to our freedom and peace on our continent, we must now also apply whatever it takes to our defense.
So crazy, he's saying here, we have to print unlimited money, because your security is at stake. And yes, that's true. The military history in Germany doesn't look good, and everything is totally decayed. And I'm not a military expert or anything, but what you hear about is the military in Germany. Absolutely, I'd say, not capable of defense and so on. But to come back here with the rhetoric of fear, that is to say, fear is never a good advisor. Everyone should know that. It's always better to act out of abundance, love, compassion, and peace rather than out of fear. But fear is what dictators, a whole bunch of clowns, and a lot of really bad people have used for centuries to control people. Don't waste time here. It's stupid to fall for this fear rhetoric. Stay in your power, stay in your own, let's say, strength, and don't let these clowns talk you into anything. Sure, I'd say we're living in turbulent times, but if you keep pushing the panic button and telling people, hey, folks, the world is ending, we need to print money. If we don't print money, something's gonna blow up, then, I don't know, we're just gonna crash into a wall. I mean, we're already heading straight for the wall, so we don't need to add more fear rhetoric on top of that. But this is really important for you to understand how this works here. And then you get these rhetorical tricks like, whatever it takes, we have to print as much as we can. Print, print, print. And that means again, euro against zero. And Bitcoin. To the moon, other tangible assets to the moon. Whoever doesn't have any tangible assets right now, whoever doesn't have any limited things that can't just be inflated by politics, is really in trouble here. Yeah, he's really got the short end of the stick here.
Secondly, the additional spending on defense can only be managed if our economy gets back on a stable growth path. In no time.
For that, we need capable people in the government and not just any clowns, but that's just my opinion.
This requires not only a significant improvement in the competitive conditions for our economy, but also quick and sustainable investments in our infrastructure. The necessary funds for this cannot be financed solely from the current budgets of the federal government, the states, and the municipalities.
Sure, that would definitely be possible. You just have to wipe the slate clean here, bring out the chainsaw, just like in the Department of Government Efficiency in the U.S. I mean, the bureaucracy is getting out of hand. We already have record tax revenues. And Friedrich Merz said something like that. In the previous interview or in his old statements, he said, hey, we already have record revenues, 1,000 billion in tax revenues. Or whatever, I don't know what he said there. We already have massive revenues. And now he has this turnaround and suddenly says, no, it's not enough just to be in the government anymore. Now we have to print money again. And so on. That means it's always like that. Opposition work. Then you say, okay, when you're in the opposition, you attack everything. And when you're in the government, you forget everything. Then you say, okay, now we're just going to hit the money button again. Because it's just too easy. That's also the problem with fiat systems. It's way too easy to just hit the money button here. The problem, you can't even blame Friedrich Merz for this. The problem is that there is a money button here at all, that there is even the possibility of making a change in the law and then pressing the money button. If there were no money button here, then he could change the law as much as he wanted, then he could change the law 100 times, but you still wouldn't be able to print money. Imagine we are in a world where there is only Bitcoin. Then Merz can say 10 times that the debt brake has been bypassed. Then he can say 10 times, okay, we're creating a special fund and so on. But if you can't print money, then the politician can't really do anything here. So the problem is that politicians are so powerful because of the whole fiat system, the whole money printing process. And that's why politicians can redistribute your purchasing power. That's why politicians have a certain power here. But in the end, they are all just clowns with a money button to push. And they think they're the kings just because they have this money button. And they think they know what to do with the money and how to best redistribute purchasing power. But they've forgotten that redistributing purchasing power is always based on theft, always based on robbery, and never comes from a collective consciousness. I mean, how can that be? Every child understands that freedom and peaceful interaction with one another, along with basic principles like not stealing, not robbing, not killing, and so on. How can it be that a politician suddenly thinks these are bad things, and so on? Of course, that might be a bit exaggerated in this context, but I keep saying it over and over. We are not separate. We are all one. We are all a family of humanity. And the magic here is that Bitcoin connects us with each other because Bitcoin teaches us exactly that, not to steal from each other. Voluntary interaction works better than involuntary interaction. And stories like that are just how it is. Basic fundamentals, that's what Bitcoin is based on. And fiat is exactly the opposite. Fiat teaches us here to separate from one another, to divide. And then all the ego stories come back into play, because fiat also has the incentive to massively boost your ego, since you have to take from someone else, because it's a zero-sum game and not a positive-sum game. And that's why you can't really blame politicians too much, because the incentives are so bad that you're basically always pushed to be trapped in your ego. Basically, just going further and then using the money printing machine to steal, to rob. But I mean, yeah, just take a look at how all these wars are financed. They're all financed through the fiat money printer. So, if you were to say here that, okay, we're even recklessly putting people's lives at risk, maybe that's not so far off the mark, but just listen to what's coming next.
That's why we want to establish a credit-financed immediate program, a special fund of 500 billion euros for the next 10 years, from which these necessary investments will be made. We assume that this special fund will also trigger significant private investments. This special fund is also supposed to be supported by the two factions of the CDU, CSU, and SPD. Next week, it will be initiated through a proposal to amend the constitution.
Yeah, Germany is in a tough spot. That's a shame. A lot of people here are really on the right track. And then there are people who just draw the line and just say, okay, no, no, no. We'd rather build a political system based on lies, on robbery, on theft, and so on. Daniel Stelter puts it very aptly here, not a word about the considerable savings potential in the household. Not a word about excessive subsidies, instead just throwing money at it and pretending the problem is solved. Ignoring the fact that the budget is overstretched will have bitter consequences when the money is spent. Because that's the next thing before the special fund. It's after the special fund, and it's an endless cycle. And if you think you can somehow generate prosperity with money, then you've really lost your mind. Well, you can't say it any other way. Guys, if you're here now, if you want to set your sights on prosperity for generations, then you shouldn't be saving in euros. Instead, you should be thinking about alternatives. I'm putting a link down here where you can easily and safely buy Bitcoin. With the code, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin here at 21bit.coin. This isn't investment advice. Do whatever you think is right. You can just do like Olaf Scholz. Keep your money in a savings account. But don't complain in 20 years when you have no purchasing power left and when a euro tends towards zero and the whole thing is overinflated. See you then. Peace out.